Greetings. It's time for The Five on pages 391 to 396 with your host, it's me, Eric Gassman. All based on the words of David Kennedy, author of The American Pageant. Today's five will feature Zachary Taylor. Also starring Millard Fillmore and everybody's favorite Franklin Pierce. All right, we are picking up our story at the end of 1849, beginning of 1850, and it looks like a civil war may begin in the United States. And where will it begin? Texas? New Mexico? All right. Maybe it doesn't happen that way, but it looked like it was gonna in 1850. So let's jump into the five. Hope you can see the notes behind me, and let's roll into this. Hey, will the Civil War start in 1850 is a good question. At the time, we have a Whig president, and ironically, he is a slaveholder from the South, from Louisiana, in Zachary Taylor. But Zachary Taylor wants to see the spread of slavery actually stopped from moving west into the territories gained from the Mexican War. So he is in favor of the passing of the Wilmot Proviso, which has for several years been hotly debated on whether slavery will be allowed in California, New Mexico, Utah, the areas gained from the Mexican War. As Congress continues to every year see the House pass the Wilmot Proviso and the Senate doesn't, no decision has been made on slavery in the territories gained. And Taylor is going to work behind the scenes, talking to people he knows in New Mexico and California, urging them to apply for statehood as a free state before Congress makes that decision for them on whether they will be free or slave. California is going to apply for statehood in 1849. New Mexico has not yet at this point when 1850 begins. Now, slave Texas, which has been a slave state since 1845, opposes a free New Mexico state right next to it and actually claims that the eastern half of New Mexico is part of Texas and always has been. Texas is going to claim that the city of Santa Fe is actually part of Texas. And if that were true, New Mexico would have nowhere near enough people, the 60,000 required, to apply for statehood. Taylor is going to make it clear that New Mexico does include Santa Fe, and Texas's governor is going to tell Taylor that they will defend, Texas will defend its possessions in what Taylor says is New Mexico with force if necessary. Now, with California statehood being debated, with a bill getting pushed through the House to ban slavery in Washington, D.C., with anger in the South over the increasing success of the Underground Railroad to aid escaped slaves into the North and even into Canada, there is a lot of tension here that is bubbling over as we move into the 1850s. And Whigs Henry Clay and Daniel Webster, who have worked on compromises to keep the Union together for 40 years, are going to once again propose a pro-union, pro-unity, pro-nationalism compromise. A little something for the South, a little something for the North, a little something for Texas to keep the calm and to make sure that this doesn't erupt into civil war. Taylor, who is also a Whig, will make it clear to Henry Clay, if your compromise includes anything that placates Texas, I will veto it. So suddenly the Texas issue is the hot one. Taylor is going to actually ready the army to act on Texas. Texas is going to ready its own military to attack and possess and surround Santa Fe. The South is going to openly pledge support for Texas should Taylor move the army into place. And it looks like we're going to have a civil war. But the Unionists will prevail. Clay will get his compromise through, hence his nickname, the Great Compromiser, and he will save the nation again, just like he had during the nullification crisis, just like he had in the Missouri issue in 1819, Clay will get a compromise pushed through the legislative branch. But won't Taylor veto it? Well, Taylor is going to unexpectedly die. Quick story, but at least it's a little interesting. Taylor, on July 4th, right, of 1850, is at a fundraiser, right, outside, where today you have what's called the Mall in Washington, D.C. It has the Lincoln Memorial and it has the Washington Memorial. Now, at this time, Lincoln hasn't even been president, so that's not even a thing. But the Washington Monument is being designed and construction will soon start. They're having a fundraiser on July 4th to get more money for the Washington Monument. At it, they're serving iced milk and fruit. It's a hot day in the 90s, and the fruit has gotten very warm. And several members of Taylor's cabinet and Taylor himself are all going to get sick from eating the warm fruit. Taylor will die 5 days later of a huge fever and horrible intestinal. This is like the third day in a row we've talked about diarrhea. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, Taylor dies. This is actually, for preserving the Union, a pretty good thing. Because Taylor was kind of Andrew Jackson-ish in a way. You know, this classic war hero saying Texas isn't going to control what I do as president. And I'll hang everybody in Texas if that's going to prove that point. So when Taylor unexpectedly dies, the vice president, Whig Millard Fillmore, is going to tell Clay quickly, get the compromise through Congress and I'll sign it and let's settle this thing and keep the peace. And the compromise of 1850 is pounded out. Behind me, you'll see 6 parts of the compromise of 1850. 3 were intended to favor the North, 3 were intended to favor the South. If there's a problem with the compromise of 1850 that you'll see is that what the North gains is long-term and what the South gained was temporary. So this is a compromise that in the long run is going to favor the North. For example, term number 1, California is entered into the Union as a free state, which will give the free states the majority, not only in the House, but now in the Senate as well. Number 2, Texas surrenders Santa Fe and New Mexico peacefully, opening up the possibility of New Mexico to soon become a state. 3, while slavery was not banned in the District of Columbia, the slave trade will be. So there is no buying or selling of slaves in the District of Columbia. What does the South get? Well, Texas is paid for their lost territory. They're paid $10 million for eastern Santa Fe to drop their claims. New Mexico and Utah territories are created from the Mexican cession, and this was meant to be a southern placation that they will have popular sovereignty in New Mexico and Utah territories, which means the people who live there get to vote and decide, do they want slavery or not? So it's open to the possibility where the Wilmot Proviso would have banned slavery outright in those territories. And the most important thing the South wanted was stringent fugitive slave laws. So we have the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 that is attached to the compromise. This is going to rigidly enforce the return of escaped slaves to the South and enlist strict penalties against those who aid and actually those who don't help capture escaped slaves. So this is a pretty intense law. It's going to create some problems. But in the meantime, the Union is saved. Yay, Henry Clay did it again. And the economy is booming in both the South and the North. So people are feeling pretty good about the state of the Union. Is this a new era of good feelings? Heck no. The Compromise of 1850 is going to create some problems too. So let's look at those. The tensions were lifted, but it's temporary. The free states do have the majority now in the House and Senate and can pass laws kind of over the slave South's objections. The New Mexico and Utah territories, they find quickly that cotton is not going to grow well here, which means there's not really a need for slavery. And so suddenly it appears New Mexico and Utah, when they do become states, will most certainly be free. The Fugitive Slave Law, by the way, is the biggest pain to come out of the Compromise of 1850. Because for a long time, Northerners were just able to ignore slavery. But now slavery is kind of being brought to them. There's bounty hunters all over the place looking for the thousands of escaped slaves that have made it to the North over the last 10 years. And when they catch them, they are chaining them up and marching them through the streets. And suddenly, white Northerners who have always just been able to ignore slavery are seeing its cruelty firsthand. And the moral objection, the Christian objection to slavery, is going to start to grow in the North. And it's not the only thing that's growing. The Compromise of 1850 delayed war, right? For at least 10 years, it's going to delay war. Good job, Henry Clay. But during that 10 years, the North is going to grow and grow. It's going to grow in population. It's going to grow in wealth. It's going to grow in industry and factories and manufacturing. It's going to be building ships and building railroads all across the North. Also, the hatred for slavery is going to grow. And during those same 10 years in the South, nothing changes. It's cotton. That's it. No railroads. We have rivers. Slavery, keep it going. In the South, nothing really changes. And so those 10 years that are bought by the Compromise of 1850 are actually going to be significant in the fact that the United States will be growing in population and wealth, but that growth is going to be seen primarily in the northern states. So we get to the election of 1852, and the election of 1852 is going to spell the end for the Whigs. So this is problematic in a way, because the Whigs and Democrats up to this point had both been national parties. They had been parties that attracted support from the North and the South. And the Democrats will continue to do that, to draw votes from the North and the South. But the Whigs are going to see their party ripped apart by the election of 1852 and by the Compromise of 1850. So in this election, the Democrats are going to do what they've done the last couple. They're going to nominate a Northerner. They have stronger support in the South. So they're going to put a Northerner, but a Northerner who is known to be sort of non-controversial and actually does support compromising with the South. The Whigs, they could go another direction. They could have renominated Millard Fillmore, who kept the peace, right, and put the compromise through. They could have gone with, Daniel Webster or Henry Clay. These guys are a possibility, although they're getting pretty old. Instead, they go with the classic Whig formula, war hero. It worked with Harrison. It worked with Taylor. Let's try it again. Winfield Scott. Winfield Scott has fought in every single war in American history, just about. The War of 1812, all the way to like the Aroostook War, the hero of the Mexican War. He's done it all. And he's a Southerner. But Winfield Scott is going to come out openly and say that the fugitive slave law is a great thing. And to Northern Whigs, these conscience Whigs and the Free Soilers, they can't stand it. So unhappy about the choice of Scott and his support for the fugitive slave law, many Northern Whigs vote for Pierce. And Pierce is going to win the election of 1852 easily. So as 1852 ends, we have the unfortunate circumstance of the Whig Party, the one party that has been working for 40 plus years to keep the country together. That's been their only mission. That's been Henry Clay's life mission. Keep the Union strong. Keep the South and North from killing each other, because we can all have success. Remember the American system, all of the things that Henry Clay has pushed through to support unity. Now, in 1852, the Whigs are going to split. And instead of being a national party, they're going to split by Northerners who hate the fugitive slave law and Southerners who support it. The Whigs are going to lose the election, lose control of the White House, and lose control of Congress. And maybe the most severe blow to the Whigs, both Henry Clay and Daniel Webster are going to pass away by the end of 1852. So a party best known for compromise, for putting nation over sectionalism, will die with Clay and Webster. And what will replace it? We're going to see the Democrats grow an increasingly Southern party, and a new party will rise called the Republicans, who will become a Northern party. And when sectionalism is amplified by party politics, we're going to start to see bigger issues rise up. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's The Five.